Hello everybody. I wanted to make this video to talk about the hidden chapters of my novel. I think it's a very important aspect to explain in order to understand the full depth of the book. Um, Let me show you that this is the story and this are the hidden chapters. So the story is complete with the hidden chapters. What does that mean? When a writer is writing, usually you develop the story with the characters and you develop the characters with the story and vice versa. In this case, the characters were developed before the story began. So when the story began, the characters already had the development needed to move the story forward. And it means that I, as the writer, I didn't push the characters for development. They were already developed. So they reacted as how they were. Let me do an analogy because I want to be specific with words. If a baby is born in a world, the baby develops and grows in the world that he is born in. But if you bring a person who is already developed into the world, then it does not grow with the world that is brought upon. He has another perspective and he has another development which can clash or he can adapt to the world. That is an analogy that is investigated and explored in this book. And what is important about the hidden chapters is that in another video that we'll be doing later on, I'll be explaining a little more about the depth. But the hidden chapters, they add more dimensions to what the mind can grasp in the wisdom and knowledge that is reflected to the reader. The hidden chapters are before the story. The story ends, and when you begin to read the hidden chapters, you're actually inside the story again to actually meet the end again. I'm not spoiling anything. I'm just talking about the structure so you understand how mind-blowing reading can be. Especially with this book, but yeah, you can be mind-blown with many books. So the hidden chapters, they add another level to the depth of the reflection of the reader in grasping wisdom and knowledge. But there's also another point. This book was also an alchemical procedure for me as I studied philosophy, spirituality, the mind, alchemy throughout these years. The characters were asking questions that I didn't know, so I had to find the questions and the answers in order to progress with the characters already developed and with the story. So as I was reading and writing, there was also a development of myself with finding myself, which is also reflected in the book. But as the characters were pushing the story without me having any control of it, because the characters were already developed and they are the ones who are actually pushing the story forward, the story ended before I could actually implement all the things that I wanted to. So after it ended and I published it in 2015 as the story itself, there was a lingering feeling that there was a little bit more that I had to implement, but I didn't know how. So I began exploring these settings that were not included in the story, and I saw how the characters were expressing to actually say what they wanted to say that they couldn't in the story. So slowly, these hidden chapters were molding, and little by little, it just completed the project in a way where I could say, okay, it is done. That's why I included the hidden chapters. It is part of the story. And I call them hidden because they're not part of the story per se. They're parallel to the story. There's a lot of dimensions and time flowing and astral travel, but it is part of the project itself, of the development of the art, of the literature, especially of the quantum literature that it has. It is also part of the alchemy of the reader and the characters. So it's very important that the hidden chapters are also part of the story. They're not separate. I wanted to say that there are 6 chapters after the story. They're hidden chapters, and yes, it was part of the alchemy that that I had to implement in order to complete the project. With that, I guess there's not much to say about the hidden chapters. I didn't spoil anything. I didn't say anything about the plot or the characters or what happens. It is such an adventure that I'm very excited. I'm very passionate to talk about, but I can't. So read it on your own, enjoy it, and yeah, thank you.